Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Mike.
So we're back. This is episode 4 of our series of Debatable. So flipped a coin before. Past Grand Master of Kansas, most worshipful Big Daddy Bob. He's a proponent. Past Master of Albert Pike Lodge, Mike Ward, will be the opponent of a topic they are yet to discover. And frankly, I hope it's one that makes both of them uncomfortable. So let's see what we have. Oh yeah, this is the one I was hoping. And full disclosure, boys, I do have these labeled, so if I want to take somebody to F-Town, I'm ready to go. So just want you to know this. When my boy next to us drew a pro, I wanted to make sure I picked something that I knew he wouldn't be for. But he's going to convince us today that he is. The topic is one-day classes. And what we're talking about is you can become a Master Mason, not the 32nd in the shrine and all that. We're talking 1st through 3rd degree in one day. So you better get your mouth there moistened up there, most worshipful. So he'll start out as the proponent. Mike will be the opponent. Then Mike will come back. He'll do his opening statement. He'll come back to refute some stuff that most worshipful Bob said. Bob will close out, and me as the moderator. We will. I will make the tough decision of what we should do in the Grand Lodge of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. So stay with us. We'll give us 5 minutes, and we'll let the gents prepare.
Let's go to F-Town.
5 minutes later.
All right, we're back. We're ready. Most forceful Bob, I'd like to give you the floor and tell all of our listeners why we should have one-day classes and Freemasons should be able to start and end all in the same day.
Yeah, one-day classes. So to me, and I think to a lot of brothers, Masonry ties us to the past, but it's always been in touch with the current day. It's always had to evolve. I think on the topic of one-day classes, one-day Blue Lodge classes, we need to look at how do we evolve and continue to meet the norms of current society, current times, without sacrificing our core. That's our principle, our rituals, our time-honored and deeply entrenched traditions. So that's what evolution is. You have to evolve or die. Right, period, right? How do you do that without sacrificing your core? So I think a couple things. I think the definition was key. This is Blue Lodge Masonry only. We know that there's other jurisdictions that have experimented and maybe still do multiple bodies on one day. That is completely off the table here. I think another key thing is setting boundaries and limits. You have to firmly define. How are we going to do this? What's important that we keep in our jurisdiction that's not going to change? Is there a limit on people? What's the number of people we can do with quality, not sacrifice that? You have to know and set those boundaries or you're setting yourself up for failure, even if you're doing it single degrees, right? It's no different. You got to know those boundaries. But once you do that, if you're taking them through the same walk and talk, if after those degrees, they are required to go through the same vetting, understand the same intimate journey of each degree. And in some jurisdictions, it's a little more, a little less to prove proficiency. All that is, nothing's changed. We're just talking the amount of time you get the degrees. Everything else is the same. Then where are we going to evolve? If we're not going to change our ritual, and we know we're not going to do that, what can we do to keep up with today's society? What's the biggest constraint? I think I've heard it on other podcasts, maybe even on this Debatable before, constraints on time. Multiple working parents. We got dads, moms coaching soccer, jazz, piano, flute, everything else. So how do we help get into this FedEx time environment we live in? Immediate things have to happen right away without losing our core. I say there's opportunities to do that with the one-day class if you set the boundaries, you know your limits, you don't scrunch on quality. All you're doing is put it in one day. I think the challenge is the mentality of some of our older brothers. We just got to make sure we bring everybody along on this journey. You can't have Joe on the side over saying, that's not how I did it. Because the answer is, Yeah, it is. Didn't you walk this walk? Didn't you make this circumambulation? Didn't you do that? Weren't you in the hand of a brother and doing it just like I did? The answer is yes. Did you have to prove proficiency when you're done? Yes. We just can't get lazy on the other side of the altar, guys, and not do the follow-up. That's where I think a lot of jurisdictions are challenged. So I think it could be a tool. I think you have to have boundaries and limits. You've got to set your quality bar and not let it drop at all. I will say this is not those jurisdictions that may be doing 400 or 700 in a day. Sorry, you know who you are, right? I don't think you can keep the quality. You can keep the bar high by doing it that. You're not setting boundaries. Keep the boundaries, keep our core, and move it to one day. I think we have the ability in this day and age to do that. We just have to embrace it. Don't lose your core, but we got to evolve or die. That's where I stand.
All right, great opening statement. Worshipful Mike, take him to Pound Town.
Well, like has been discussed in other issues and topics, Masonry is founded in a lot of traditions, a lot of ritual. You lose that if you're trying to do this in an all-in-one day. These traditions are the same now as they were when President George Washington went through and became a Mason. That experience will be lost for that individual if we do it as an all-in-one day. We need to keep that experience the same for everyone throughout the years, everywhere we are, everywhere in Kansas. They can all experience the same thing. I didn't experience Masonry coming into it any different than Bob did, even though he came in years ahead of me. Years. I'm not going to go into how many years.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
You know, this is an individual sport, not a team sport to begin with. The experience should be for the individual. Each individual, it's their responsibility to take away from it what they learned, what they see. You know, my experience may be a little different than Brian, but those traditions and those ideals come up as an individual going through the degrees and learning the different concepts within it. Again, they miss out on what the meaning is. There's also the brotherhood development. If you're doing it all in one day, you miss that brotherhood development that you would have one-on-one with somebody if you're being coached. But if you're just going through all in one day, you miss that. You know, if I was needing help going through the degrees, I know Bob would be there for me. But if you go through an all in one day, you're not going to learn that. You're not going to learn enough about the brotherhood and what it means to be a brother in going through all in one day. You know, and for these lodges out there that say, well, we just don't have the people available to do the degree work. You know what? There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of brothers, and there's a lot of lodges, and at the shrine, there's even a degree team that will come out and do degree work for you and help you through this. So that excuse is completely lost. So I guess with that, I'm gonna close with that, and then I'll go on to my rebuttal if that's okay.
You are wound up. Keep going.
My biggest problem with what worshipful or most worshipful Bob said was the instant gratification. Today's society is too wrapped up in instant gratification. We all need to slow down, take a step back, and learn something for once instead of just expecting it to be thrown our way. This will mean more if you take your time to go through it. Now, I also understand there are some people that don't memorize as well as others, and that could be an issue for them. Guys, just because you can't memorize as well as somebody else doesn't mean you're not a great Mason. Come, take the time, learn it. I'm betting that the level of proficiency is different for each individual person, because if you get the concept of what you're being taught, you're going to make it. So don't worry about word for word. You're a good man. We care about you. Your brotherhood is what we're looking for. So take the time. Instant gratification. Don't worry about that one-day class. And that, I will turn it over to Bob.
All right. You get the final close. You get to end with this debate and send it over to me.
Excellent. First of all, very well spoken and have the highest esteem for my dear brother. Love for my brother there. I apologize that maybe your view on this is a little narrow and you don't quite get that. We're not talking a replacement. This is a tool. We're not saying maybe we get a brother in the 1-day degree and we've realized, hey, you're struggling to get what we need to get here today, and we pulled them out. This is not a replacement, guys. It's a tool, right? So this isn't going away. Also, I think there are reasons to do the degree, the option for a 1-day. I would absolutely agree with my worshipful brother here. Not enough. There's all kinds of problems to do or not do things. None of those are reasons to do this. This lodge has got to work on itself, grow, be proficient to do the degree work. We're talking about a tool, not a stopgap because we can't do all of this. Now the 1-day class is the only thing we can do. No, that lodge still has the same accountability and responsibility to get proficient, stay proficient. You took your oath as master whenever you sat in the east that you would do that. So stop shirking that. Just know that we have to evolve or die. I'll have to rewind and see about the word instant gratification. I do know in today's instant society, time is a constraint. That's my point. It's not about instant gratification, but it is how do we keep having good men come and join. I love the tie to the history. I'm all about history. I'm a legacy Mason, which is one of my strongest pride points in the whole fraternity, right? My dad being a Mason and coming through with my brother. I appreciate George was too. You know what? Well, I'm not riding a horse to lodge. Does that make me less of a Mason than George? I don't think so, right? I think there's an evolution there, right? And it's not losing the core. That's what I'll go back to. So I would just say the brotherhood aspect, very fair point. Why does Scottish Rite have reunions? Why do colleges have? What other fraternities have reunions? You get a brothers going through an event together at the same time, forming a bond, right, during that event, that one-time event together. Pretty strong bond. I believe you two may have been military. I'm sure you had shared experiences that were meant just to do that, a shared experience together. So we can do that without losing the individuality from each Mason going through. So appreciate the point. I think there's room and opportunity here to do that. Regardless of this, then what are we going to evolve in? Evolve or die, the craft or anything else. So that's my rebuttal, and I'll leave it with that.
So I've been in this position now twice, and if those that are listening, this is what I went through, maybe went through the same thing. You kind of ramp up, you're like, oh yeah, I'm with them. Then you get the rebuttals like, oh yeah, no, that's a great point. Then he gets his counterpoints, oh, that's a great point. Then he comes back down, and now you're right back here. There were some things that were made. So full disclosure, when I came into Masonry, I got my first degree in Lodge. And then in our jurisdiction, we had a thing called the Chance to Advance.
Yeah.
And in fact, my boy next to me, we went through it together. Right? So I think it was an interesting tool. So I kind of go with Bob. At first, we're saying, he kind of narrowed it down as, we're not saying it should be for everyone. It should be a tool that's sitting there in the toolbox. He kind of set these parameters up where we don't want 400, we don't want all of that. So he's building the case. And then Mike comes around and says, yeah, but you know what? The instant gratification, if something's worth it, you'll be patient and go through with it. So I'm like, I'm all about that. And then Mike threw something else out, and he's like, hey, the reason that one of his counterpoints were, it's all about the brotherhood, right? So, and then Bob sees that by the Scottish Rite reunions, because Mike and I came to the C2A together, knew each other, right? But then we went 2 weeks later to the Scottish Rite reunion, where that's where our bond really started to form as a group. And that's when we met Derek and Mark and Donovan, just this whole crew. And because you're doing it together, and then we immediately go through 2 weeks later into the shrine as a team type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if a point is, hey, it's, for the camaraderie, I would argue that I would not go back and change my Masonic journey, because we might not have clicked the way that we did.
Yeah.
Our classes may not have vibed. So I had that opportunity. Now, that's no reason to make it an I, this is why you should do it. I want to stick to this argument. So my answer is this. I think one-day classes should be in every toolbox for every Grand Master, and they should probably, if there's a need, they should deploy those at least once a year in some sort of set parameter to accommodate the needs of the brothers, especially when there's some questionable degree work being done all around the states. If you're going to deliver it, it needs to be delivered in a quality experience. And it may be like with our lodge, we would never need that, right? We went through it because we didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But our lodge doesn't need it, but it comes back to it's not about us and it should be here. Clear set parameters, but yet a tool in the toolbox for grandmasters to use. So that's where I'm at. Gents, thanks for watching the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. And a disclosure, we picked these before, and I can tell you, you'd be shocked who hates it and who went through a format of that. So this is why we like these. We like to challenge thought processes. Thanks.